Oh my god.
That's all you get. A little tease of the next project.
Are you f***ing me? Was that Bloodborne 2? Was that Bloodborne 2? No, it wasn't. I mean, I really wanted it to be, but the simple answer is that was Sekiro, a sort of spiritual rebirth of the Tenchu series that FromSoft has recently come out and talked about, and I got a chance to play, and should be arriving within the next 4 months or so. However, with a lot of FromSoft games, there's always interesting details and hints that sort of connect the lore and connect characters and connect the worlds between them, even though it's not officially supported, and something recently happened today. Déraciné, a PlayStation-exclusive VR game that was directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, as well as From Software with a lot of the people that we remember from Bloodborne and many of their big titles, recently came out, and people got to dive in and start figuring out all the secrets. Now, there's a couple of things in here that have definitely piqued my interest, as well as several others on a couple of community forums, that I think is worth talking about, much less making a video about, just because the connections seem to be so damn clear. Now, there is a few of them, and the way they're presented got me pretty excited, but let's take a look at them first, and then quickly go over what the hell this means for the future. While Déraciné doesn't really have any connection to Bloodborne or the Souls universe in any way, it's kind of its own separate thing, and it's a very whimsical adventure. It's a much different tone than a lot of the other FromSoft games that you kind of remember, but you do come across this book item, which is titled Blood and Bones, and of course, the title itself has a very similar font to Bloodborne, and there is a description for the item too that reads, "Prose of some terrible tale, this fabled land of gold, silver, and sacrifices owed both its rise and fall to its inhuman warriors. They applied face paint brewed from blood, giving them the strength of the gods, and carved up their own bones, crafting the weapons of the gods. Yet their legacy is neither here nor there." It's my understanding that, while I haven't played all of Déraciné, I've been watching a lot of it on Twitch and other people play it, this doesn't really tie into much of the lore of that game specifically about fairies and the whimsical tale. This little nod is a much different tone, much closer to something like Bloodborne, which then ties back to the cover of the book, the font, and everything sort of seeming closely related. Now, the next one is where I got really excited because this is an in-depth sort of reference. Bloodborne has a lot of tricks, a lot of secrets, and a lot of stuff that takes a while to figure out. If not, people are still figuring out to this day with hidden bosses and content that's been cut and everything like that. But this one hits home for a lot of Bloodborne fans if you played the game a lot. You can come across this doll called the Fiona doll. It's just sitting next to a character as she's looking outside a window in Déraciné. Doesn't really seem to have any relation to what's going on, but the doll reads, "It's a stone girl by the name of Fiona who appears in the unfinished tale. When a person has a bad dream, Fiona appears and helps them flee." The immediate implications are, oh, it's a doll. It's going to be like the doll from Bloodborne. It has somewhat of a similar sort of appearance, but it is a stone girl. She's actually made of stone in what is presumed to be an unfinished tale. A lot of people are thinking that Unfinished Tale is actually the story of Yharnam, the story of Bloodborne and the Hunter, but it isn't just that, and this is the moment where I respectively lost my shit. If you hold the doll for a little bit in VR, the arms change direction. The arms start off in an upward and sidewards angle and then switch directions, just like the make contact sign in Bloodborne if you wait about 60 seconds to communicate with one of the Great Ones. I could understand the book being sort of a common thing, just a font they use, and tales and lore of things that exist in the game, but the characters don't really talk about, but this is a direct reference to something in Bloodborne, which it could just be a reference, and that's fine. It could just be them making nods and humor at tons of other things that have existed throughout the lore of their games, and they've done this all the time. They've in fact hinted at a bunch of other characters that have shown up in other games. There's a character in Dark Souls 1 that sort of hints at the Bloodborne universe. There's a character in the Bloodborne universe that's a hunter that comes from an eastern land that a lot of us were presuming was going to be related to Sekiro in some way, and we still don't know because we haven't played all of Sekiro yet. And now we get this doll directly referencing something in Bloodborne, as well as a book directly referencing what seems to be something from Bloodborne, if not its future. But the thing that ties it all together is another item that you find. It's called the Seafaring Sage, and that looks kind of familiar. Once again, this weird octopus squid thing can be found in the game. has a description, but doesn't really apply itself to any of the lore in Déraciné, and it seems like a hint at something else. The description is also directly related to the Fiona doll we talked about earlier, described as a statuette of a seafaring sage that appears in an unfinished tale. It is said to appear in bad dreams, to watch over those who attempt to leave. Now, as much as people like to think I'm absolutely crazy for thinking there could be a Bloodborne 2, I think these two items having a direct association with each other is probably one of the biggest things that FromSoft has dropped about the existence of Bloodborne in any way outside of the first game. Some will be convinced that this isn't related to anything and is just small Easter eggs, because FromSoft has been known to troll a lot when it comes to the different sort of projects they talk about. When Bloodborne was first announced, if not being spoken about after Dark Souls came out, Miyazaki kind of was going on a tangent saying that he wants to make something a bit different than the dark world of Dark Souls. And then he comes up with Bloodborne next. So these guys are known, they seem to be very self-aware about the titles they're producing and the fandom that is sort of itching for information. But if this stuff hasn't convinced you, I think the next hint in the game will. The last part comes in a credit sequence where you see a lot of the characters going through actions throughout the game and you see where they're going and stuff like that. There's one random shot of a hallway and you see the doll Fiona as well as the seafaring sage actually holding each other and in each other's arms, which is another direct reference to the end of, well, spoilers, the end of Bloodborne if you get the true ending. So that's 3 references that appear to be directly relating to the Bloodborne universe, if not the future of Bloodborne in some way or story. So with that being said, I think we have a definitive answer to the lifelong question. Was that Bloodborne 2?
Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
To be frank, I am really excited about this. It seems that the team that's behind Bloodborne, as well as Miyazaki himself, are sort of directly referencing something from their previous games, and hopefully hinting at something towards the future. The interesting thing to note about all of this is that Déraciné is not a multi-console game. This is a game that only is showing up on PlayStation VR, and is a direct Sony product, similar to another little game that they have called Bloodborne. And there's also something that's going to be happening probably within the next year or so, and that's most likely the announcement of the next generation of systems. I could absolutely see a future where Sony and Bloodborne could be making an appearance back, and it could be one of the bigger driving forces of the PlayStation 5. It's also an interesting note that Sony has not really forgotten about Bloodborne. It's one of their biggest first-party IPs and one of the best-selling games on PlayStation 4, as well the fact that there's toys and comics and apparel and t-shirts, and it just goes on from there. Bloodborne still makes money for Sony, even years after it's been out. So I think that this is sort of a tease at the future. I definitely think this could be happening, but it's probably going to take some time, just because we don't know when next generation is going to be happening. And I really think that that's the best opportunity for them to do so, to wow everyone for what the hell they're going to be doing with their next generation of consoles. And my God, dude, you want to talk about an IP that people go freaking crazy about, myself included, it's Bloodborne.